friends. The guest today is Nitya Shanti. A lot of my cult friends may know of him because we have meditated to his meditation on our cult app. Nitya Shanti is a corporate employee turned a monk turned a spiritual guru. However, what drew me to him several years back was his good looks and his youthfulness. And then, as I slowly started listening to him, his tips, his energy, his talks all made absolute sense. So it is today. Nitya, welcome to Life Begins at 40. Thank you so much for agreeing to come. So, the first question that I would like to ask you is, did you christen yourself Nitya Shanti?
Yeah, I did, because my original name is Harsh, and then I became a monk, so they gave me a new name, Jnana Santi. And then when I left the monk life, I was about 28 years old. Then you don't normally continue with your monk name. But the old name Harsh, somehow it wasn't really matching, it wasn't vibrationally feeling appropriate to just go back to my old name, because I felt I'm moving forward now in life, not going back to who I was. It's not like I'm coming back to something. It's like a step forward. So I asked my friends to help me brainstorm. And someone recommended Prem Shanti. I thought, no, I don't like Prem Shanti. I liked the word Nitya. So I was able to combine Nitya and Shanti. So that sounded correct. Because Jnana Santi means the one who knows peace. It's Pali language. Jnana is like Jnana, Gyan. And Santi is like Shanti in Pali language. So it felt like a continuation of that. One who knows peace to Nitya Shanti means eternal peace or unchanging peace.
So would Nitya have been Nitya without becoming a monk?
Well, I guess at least the personality is informed by all our experiences. There's no doubt about it. So at the personality level, certainly my experiences of being a monk and processing that, integrating that, and everything, and you could even say every single instance of life. You never even know. Sometimes it's just a simple encounter for a few seconds or a few minutes. Because transformation doesn't happen in time. Transformation is always timeless. It's a recognition. And it may take time. Like if there's more time, you may have more chances of that glimpse. But ultimately, the glimpse always happens outside of time. So I would say yes. But at a fundamental level, these are just stories. And who we actually are. Like, before we began the conversation, you said that you would like me to share ways that people can be in touch with themselves. In order to be in touch with myself, I actually have to let go of my story. You see, right now, if I'm sitting and thinking, oh, I've been a monk for 6 years and I've taught so many people and I've done this, that actually comes in the way of me being in touch with myself. That creates a layer of concept and memory. So actually, while for the sake of discussion, we can say, yes, those experiences count, in a more fundamental way, no matter what experiences you have to, in a sense, discount those experiences or step away from those experiences to be really alive to this moment now.
What I've been taught is that we are a sum total of our experiences. So if they help build us, how can we discount them?
Discount them in the sense that, you've eaten food your whole life and that's made you, so we're not denying the fact that your food that you've eaten your whole life has made you who you are, including your genes and everything.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean we keep thinking about food all the time. Like right now you can just be, it's all right. The food is, you're not dying of hunger right now. You're not dying of thirst right now. You're not dying for breath right now. It's there. It's happening naturally. So like somebody asked the Buddha that does the enlightened person constantly think that they're enlightened? And the Buddha said no. But when they reflect, they say, there was a time when I used to suffer in that way. I no longer suffer that way anymore. Just like there have been times all of us have been ill, physically ill. And then we've recovered. But we don't think all the time, I'm healthy. No. But once in a while we reflect, there was a time when I had that sickness or I had that chronic disease or I had that fever. But I don't have it now. That's wonderful. So in the same way, the person who is liberated, and what are you liberated from? You're liberated from the dysfunctional, the artificial self that you create for yourself, the story that you create and you get wedded to. So when you see through that, and to the extent you see through that, then you're free. You're free from that dysfunctional aspect of your being.
And why a mission to spread happiness? How can we find happiness?
Well, I mean, mission is a big word. It's a way of describing. What I learned is that when I'm in a state of giving, then it means I have more than enough. But when I'm in a state of seeking, it means I don't have enough. So that's why spreading happiness is quite powerful. Spreading happiness is coming from the idea that I have more than enough. It's an abundance mindset. And seeking happiness is coming from, and no matter how so-called rich you are, or how nice things are going, but if you're seeking, then you will always have a pauper mindset. You will have the beggar's mindset, and you may have almost nothing. There's a lovely quote. There was a little anecdote. A man walking down a street, and he sees a beggar with a sign, with a little bowl in front and a sign saying, "Please spare change." And he walks ahead. There's another person sitting on the street with a bowl and a sign that says, "If you need, please take." Now he may look like a beggar, but he's not a beggar. In fact, he's bigger than a king.
Yes.
Because when he's got a few coins and he says, "If you need, please take," that mindset is even higher than a king's mindset. You see, so it's not about your circumstances; it's your consciousness. Like they asked the wise people of India, "How come you have such few possessions? How come you have almost nothing?" So the answer they got is that there was a time when I thought I'm limited to this body and this mind. And then, of course, I was seeking for other things. I was seeking for other belongings or possessions or even people. But when I realized that this whole universe is my body and this whole universe is my mind, now what is there to crave? Like, when was the last time on your vision board you said, "I want an extra lung or an extra kidney, or I want some more red blood cells"? Oh, no, I have them. Why would I want something I already have? You only want what you assume you don't have.
Yeah.
So that's a beautiful shift. That's why we say spreading happiness, because it means, and of course, even spreading happiness is a concept. What is there to spread ultimately? But when we are in the world of concepts, then let's use some interesting concepts.
So cool. So yeah, and in fact, I recently made a vision board and I put a lot of things I want to do, and you just kind of, with what you said, made me feel I don't need it any longer.
No, you can still need, what you can do now with that vision board?
Yeah.
In a way, that's the whole purpose of a vision board anyway, is that you look at it and you feel super grateful like it's already so. In fact, recently someone called me from Rajasthan and he's feeling very dejected and disappointed that he's not able to get into any of the exams, the IAS exam. He's been trying for so many years, very dejected, very disappointed. So the only exercise I gave him, I said, make a list of 10 things you want to experience in your life, whether it's a great career or a great relationship or great health or live in a nice place, whatever it is you want to achieve in your life. Make a list of 10 such things. And then as you read each thing, close your eyes and for a minimum of 2 minutes, feel grateful like it's already happened. It's a 20-minute exercise. So feeling grateful. And then I said, write back to me. And he wrote back to me gushing, saying, "Oh, wow, I can't believe I'm feeling so good. I'm feeling so light." In between, my mind wandered, but it came back. And right now I'm feeling so light, so empowered. And all I did was shift his consciousness from lack, I'm missing, I don't have, to a sense of abundance. It's already so. So all states of consciousness are available. Just like right now, I could go to my browser. Pretty much all websites are available. It's just a few types away. In the same way, all states of consciousness are available. And this is something, as human beings, it is very important for us to realize this. Otherwise, we always live, no matter how educated you are and outwardly successful you are, inwardly you're like living in a small, what does Jesus Christ say? That in my Father's mansion, there are many. In my Father's home, there are many mansions, something like that. But basically it means that this is a mansion, this world is a mansion. And most of us are just living in the toilet or the kitchen. Or the living room, and we haven't realized there are so many other rooms to explore. And so my invitation is to become an adventurer of consciousness, and through these little shifts, like for example the shift of, instead of seeing your brain, in fact one of the earlier questions you asked me, how much of my experience had led me to being Nitya Shanti, that is looking at my brain as a hard disk drive. Like my computer has a local drive where certain files are stored, but nowadays my computer also has a cloud. So I have iCloud and I have Google Drive and I have, Dropbox, and I can have a whole world of information there. And then beyond the cloud, there's the internet. So all of human experience is there. So if I start looking at my brain, not so much as a hard disk drive, but as a modem, this changes everything. If I look at the hard disk drive, then I'm, like you said, I'm made by my experiences. And then you're limited, you're bracketed by what you've experienced and what you've not experienced. And I realized this when I began teaching, and people would ask me questions about things that I had really no life experience. Someone would ask me about losing a child. Someone would ask me about getting cancer. Someone would ask me about going through a really painful, maybe separation.
Yeah.
And at that time, I may not have experienced those things. And yet, as I tuned in, I was able to share something which they said was of great value to them. Now, how is it possible for someone who's not had that disease or not had that loss or not had that difficult life experience to share something valuable? If I'm made by my experiences, it should not be possible for me to share that. But I'm more than my experiences. You see, at some level, I am the universe. I'm the fabric of the universe. Like, even if you look at it, basic genetics, your body is half mother, half father, right? Maybe your nose is of your mother's, your eyes are of your father's. And then beyond that, then their father, mother, and then their father, mother. If you go back like this, very quickly, you have thousands, millions of ancestors that are right now alive with you right now. So then are you really, then why are you limiting yourself to this life? You know, your body, if you put you into a super cold place, your body will adjust itself. If you deny you food, your body will adjust itself. Your body will come into stasis, into a state of homeostasis based on the environment it's put in, because it has memory going back countless generations. So right now, you are the sum total of all your ancestors. And they're not only ancestors, you're the sum total of all beings. And they're not only beings, you're the sum total of all the galaxies. The entire history of the universe is written within you right now. So now this is a different way of looking at it. Now this completely blows your mind. Instead of saying, oh, I'm just whatever I've experienced and not experienced, which is one story, which is true in some sense, but it's not complete. Then I am the universe, and then I'm as old as the universe, and I'm as new as the universe. The Sufis say the universe is created every moment afresh. So in other words, the universe right now was born, including memories. And how can you disprove that? So these are powerful ways of looking at things in different. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, different ways of looking at things.
How do I retain this entire state? Because what you just said made me feel expanded and also made me feel the universe is inside me.
Beautiful.
Yeah, so connected. But I do this, I feel this when I meditate, and then it goes away as I get to work. Wow.
And that's actually the structure of the universe. So we don't have to go against the structure of the universe. The structure of the universe is that you will forget. So God is playing this game where God actually wants to forget. So why would we fight that? So I go through periods where I get trapped in my personality and my quirks, and then I wake up from it, and then I get trapped, and I wake up from it. And why would I fight that? Why am I superimposing my idea of how things should be? This is the opposite of surrender. Surrender is trusting the process, right? Why would a plant that is 2 months old expect to bear mangoes? It's not the time yet. It'll bear it in its own time. And actually, it has already borne it. The fact that it's 2 months old means that it was earlier a seed, means that earlier it was a mango, means that earlier it was already a tree. In fact, we are already that. I was once in this beautiful city, Boulder, Colorado, and I was meeting a friend of mine. He's a wonderful meditator. And we were talking about, practice and meditation, and he was asking me why I practice. So I said, I would like to at least have a glimpse of my true nature before I die. You could call it awakening, you could call it enlightenment, self-realization. So he asked me a powerful question. He said, what evidence do you have that you haven't already had the glimpse? What evidence do you, and I couldn't give him any proper evidence. Like I said, I have these quirks and this. Yeah, so do you believe that having an awakening means you can never have quirks anymore? I mean, what evidence do you have that that's what it takes? So we had these ideas about how it should be, how my life would be, should be, could be.
Yeah.
What if it is just this way? And so the question about how can I retain this, right? Which is again coming from an assumption that it's not already there. It's not always available, right? So who am I without that question?
Why do I feel fear or anxiety at times?
And so I would say experience that without the word fear and anxiety. So there'll be a palpitation, there'll be maybe a sour taste in the mouth, there'll be racing thoughts, there'll be a sense of unsettledness.
Yes.
And why can't your body is perfectly capable of dealing with all those states. Your body is capable of dealing with panic attacks. Your body is capable of dealing with dread and fear. It's capable of dealing with all of those things. So I would say allow yourself to experience that. And this is exactly, we're building our resilience. What ends up happening is we want to think our way out of it, and that just traps us further. You can't think your way out of it. You got to actually you got to relax yourself. The way out actually is through.
Yeah.
So what I would invite people to do in that moment is do deeper breathing. It is impossible to have slow, deep breaths and also have a panic attack at the same time. You will only have a panic attack when you're having super shallow breath. You're like breathing almost till here.
Yeah.
And you're breathing really short, really shallow, you're crouched down, that's when you'll have a panic. In fact, you can actually simulate a panic attack. If you shut your nostrils for, you only breathe through the mouth.
Yeah.
You crouch down and you start having shallow breathing, you'll actually start having a panic attack. You can simulate a panic attack.
Okay.
So if you straighten up and you start breathing deeper and you go into your experience, instead of thinking your way out of it, you feel it fully. Fully feeling your feelings is healing.
And that could work with physical pain or emotional pain also.
Definitely. That's the way out is always through. Now, of course, we don't have to be foolish. Like if I've fallen down and I fractured my leg, I'll feel my way. Okay, that may need an intervention. You may have to put it in a cast or whatever.
What is that one thing all of us can practice upon waking up in the morning to have at least a few hours of awareness or peace without rushing into the day or thinking about what happened last day and taking it forward?
Yesterday I read an article, I have a journal, and I was just going through my journal, and this article talked about the importance of having long-term intentions. And reminding ourselves of not just, we get stressed because there are so many short-term things to do. I mean, every one of us has a backlog of email, backlog of WhatsApp messages, because nowadays there are so many platforms, first of all. So you got to keep track of who's messaged me on Facebook, on Instagram, on WhatsApp, on Telegram, on email. Yeah. So right there you have stress, right? The unfinished business leads to stress at some level. There's so much to do. So it's nice to step back and remind ourselves of a long-term intention that we have. So for example, my long-term intention, which is also an immediate intention, is to take the journey from here to here.
Okay.
Right. And I want to, it's actually the journey of zero distance. Most of us are on a journey from here to somewhere. But having played that game enough, and so you did your education and you got your house and you got your car and you got a nice relationship and you got your kids and your kids are going to college. And now the next thing, you want your kids to get married and you want them to have kids. I mean, at what point are you ever going to be satisfied? At what point are you ever going to be fulfilled, right? So at some point, you got to see through this game. So my long-term intention is that everything I'm seeking in my life, I want to experience it right now in myself. So the way that I start my day is I do a practice called self-inquiry. When I wake up, the room appears, the day appears. And I just check for a moment. A moment back, there was no room and there was no day and there was no person and there was no Nitya Shanti. And suddenly this has appeared. So in a way, out of nothing, something has appeared. Mm-hmm. So I take a step back and I say, who is having this experience? I am. So who am I? And I stay with that mystery of not knowing who I am. So out of nowhere, a reality has superimposed itself on this mystery. Right? The foundation is actually a mystery. The foundation is I don't know. And from that I don't know, some idea had come, I have to do this today, I have to meet this person today, go there today. All of that has been superimposed. So the way I do it, I undercut that. So who is having this experience? That is actually a good practice, not only in the morning, throughout the day. You keep coming back. One very tangible way of doing it, right now you can do it with me, Sanjana. So as you're looking out in front, your eyes can be open. Notice that you can see probably your device, your laptop or whatever you have. You can see a room. You can even see some part of your body. But the one thing you can't see from a first person perspective is your own face. You may see it out there, but you can't see it here. We can't see our own face. This is very fascinating. We can see everybody else's face, but we can't see our own face. We always keep our face at a distance. Right now, it's at a distance of about 2 or 3 feet for me. And if I take the laptop further away, then it'll start including more and more of the room. In the morning, you'd ask me for the morning what you can do. One thing that some people can do in the morning is when you wake up, actually shut your right nostril and breathe 10 breaths from your left nostril. Because your right nostril tells you, like right nostril is left brain, is telling you, hey, get up, a lot of things to be done, get into action, get into action, get into action. There are messages to be replied to. But left nostril, which relates to the right brain, is telling you, relax, take a moment, be grateful, enjoy this beautiful morning. What's your vision for your life? So that can be a simple way of activating our right brain. So we need both left and right brain. And one thing to learn, when I was doing my MBA, we had learned something called MBTI, and we also learned the Enneagram. These are all types. So MBTI has various types. It's a four-stage model of introverted, extroverted, intuitive or sensing, things like that. There are four of these: feeling, thinking, perceiving, or I'm forgetting the fourth one. So there are four of these: judging, perceiving, or judging. And so there's Enneagram, and there's also MBTI. And these frameworks helped me realize that, wow, every one of my classmates has their own strengths. And I might judge them because they're different from me, but actually they bring to the table something that I would never be able to bring to the table. So this is very helpful. We talk about diversity in the workplace. Diversity is not just religion. Of course, it's important, religion and sexual orientation and gender. All that's fine. That diversity is important. But a far more fundamental diversity is a diversity in which we experience our world. And some people experience it more through an introverted perspective, like gathering energy from within. Some people get it more through conversation and with other people. Some people like facts. Some people like the imagination. So the ability to see each person for who they are and what strength they bring to the table, and then finding something within the organization, within the work that we're trying to achieve that matches that. Almost no time is ever given to this. So of course, then people end up giving a fraction. We call it human resources. For me, the deeper meaning is helping humans find their resourcefulness or return to their source. That's the deeper meaning. Right now, human resources is all about using it as a resource, like everything else. Like you have capital as a resource. Now humans have also become humans are not a resource. I mean, the whole reason we're doing all of this is to have a high quality of life. So in the corporate perspective, I would say to spend a little bit more time understanding everybody, what strengths they bring. And of course, we all have our shadows as well. So we'll have somebody else. Like if I'm not very good with detail, then it's nice for me to have someone like Padmaja who helps me with the details. I don't have to beat myself up for not being detail oriented. So ideally, in a corporate work context, and of course, corporate has it has a lot of baggage, of course, because we haven't inquired. We just do think that that's the way it's supposed to be done.
Yes.
But if I think every person in a corporate environment has the duty to ask the question, what is working and what is not working? And we don't just keep doing it because that's what we've always done. This is a very silly way of going about things. We say, but what is the current reality? We have to apply this in the education space, in the work space, in our personal space. What's working, what's not working? And this is a living question. And then we ask this question, the energy we apply solving our clients' problems, and we are very creative with that. Why don't we apply some of that energy to also making our work experience a more enlivened work atmosphere? And so part of the puzzle is seeing everyone as distinct, having their own gifts, and then working together to create a work environment that truly matches our role with our gifts.
What is right and what is wrong?
I mean, it's a very subjective question. It would depend on the context. I don't think there are any absolute rights and wrongs in this world. But like, for example, I would say, what's the intention? It's all like we began with asking what the intention is. The intention is that the people listening to this can be more in touch with themselves. Now, based on that, if I just keep interrupting this with phone calls or I keep getting distracted, then it's not really helping us achieve. Or if you ask a question and I go off onto a totally different tangent instead of answering your question, then that would not be very helpful for what we're trying to achieve, perhaps. So in that context, it could be right or it could be wrong. But by itself, nothing is absolutely right or absolutely wrong. Like somebody was saying, coronavirus, is it a good thing or a bad thing? At one level, it's a very bad thing. So many people have lost jobs and such a lot of difficulty has come. But at
Yes.
the other level, it's a very good thing. Like, for example, just one, there are so many examples, but one example is people now have access to the best doctors in the world because most doctors are now available online, which they were not earlier. So if I'm sick, of course, at one level, it's become harder because hospitals, you have to go for the COVID test and all of that. But on the other hand, I have access to the best doctors in Mumbai, in New York, in any part of the world. They're all available online now because they've all come online. So there's also a gift in this. So that's true. So somebody was saying humanity is the virus and corona is the vaccine. Which on one but look at how far off. I mean, there had to be an equilibration. There had to be a balancing at some point. Now, whether it would happen through a volcanic eruption or through human beings creating nuclear war or through a pandemic, sooner or later, I mean, our lifestyle was completely unsustainable. That was so true. So yes, it's a big inconvenience, but at some level, it's also needed, right? So is it right or is it wrong? Is it good or is it bad? So in the absolute scale, there's nothing good or bad. Everything is in balance.
One last thing that you would like to share just as we end this session?
Let's tune in. Let's see what's coming. So I'm reading a book called Soft Style, Conscious Awakening. And I like the concept of soft style versus hard style. So soft style is something which is directly experienceable. So if I ask you, how is your right hand feeling? Or are you hungry right now? Or is the temperature okay for you? That would be a soft style question because you can immediately validate through your experience that, yeah, my right hand's feeling quite fine. The temperature may be a little warm. I can make it a little cooler. I'm not really hungry. I just had breakfast a little while back. These are soft style questions. But if I ask you hard style questions, for example, what is the purpose of life? What is consciousness? You know, uh, do women, how can women be more empowered? So notice one question leads you to an actual experience, and one set of questions leads you to more thinking. So the distinction he was making is that if you approach spirituality and life in general through hard style questions, you get lost in a net of concepts. Whereas if you approach it from a soft style and say, what's the emotional tone of this moment? You don't even have to give it a name, you just feel it, right? And how is my heart feeling? And am I feeling rested enough? How rested am I in this moment? Did I get enough sleep at night? Like, this is something you always have to validate from your experience, not from a memory or from a concept or from a thought. So what I'd like to leave people with is, can you have a more soft style approach to your life and your relationships and your work? You actually sense and feel the actual immediate experience. And instead of thinking your way, you feel your way. It's a much more intuitive way of living. It's a less hard way of living. And you start getting in touch with a certain rhythm, a certain pulsation. The universe does have its own rhythm. I mean, scientists found even our Earth has its own rhythm, its own frequency. Like, it's almost that the Earth has its own heartbeat, in a sense. This can actually be measured. They actually pump these frequencies into space shuttles. Otherwise, people are getting sick. The frequencies of Mother Earth are artificially pumped into the space stations. Otherwise, our human beings cannot survive on these space stations. So there's a certain pulse of life, there's a certain rhythm of life, and you get in touch with it through a soft style approach. Through being in touch, like I said earlier, it's the journey from here to here. It's the journey with no distance. It's going from being a somebody to being a nobody. It's the recognition that I cannot see my own face. Incredible mystery. In my direct experience. And so instead of living from history, you start living from the mystery. You live from history, you feel closeted. Like the first question you asked me, how much of your history is affecting who you are now? So it does, but that is only one room in a gigantic mansion. And life is inviting us to explore the rest of this mansion. And the reason we're feeling anxious and afraid is because our intuition is telling us now enough of history. Step into the mystery. Now, enough of planning and wanting to know every single detail, enough of controlling. Time to let go of control. Allow yourself to be like that leaf that the wind carries wherever it needs to be taken, like that grain of pollen that the breeze carries and takes it to wherever it needs to go. Right? So, this is the thing I'd like to share with everybody. Come back to your direct experience. The way out is through. Your direct experience will lead you home. You know, when I did Vipassana courses, they had a lovely teaching. If you want to know the ultimate truth, start with the immediate truth. The way to the ultimate truth is the immediate truth. So am I breathing in or out? Am I breathing from my right nostril, left nostril? Right? Is my mind racing or is it calm? It's not good or bad, right or wrong. It just is what it is. So you start with the immediate truth. And that immediate truth met without judgment and comparison is the doorway to the next immediate truth, the next immediate truth, the next immediate truth. And this is what takes you to the ultimate truth.
So, for those individuals and corporates that would like a closer interaction and would like to learn these practices, where do they go? Is there a website? Is there anything that they can visit?
You can find my website is nityashanti.com. I spell my name as with an H, Nithya.
Yes.
SANTI.com. They can go to nityashanti.com. Nowadays, it's a simple Google search away, isn't it? You can just search for it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much again for your time. It's been an absolute honor and pleasure.
Nice, Sanjana. All the best.